The Galactic Assembly was the largest meeting place in the known galaxy. It was a massive dome-shaped hall floating in orbit above a quiet blue world. The ceiling was made of transparent crystal, showing the endless black sky filled with distant stars. Light from 3 nearby suns streamed in, painting the floor with shifting colors. Inside the hall, hundreds of alien leaders took their seats in wide curved rows. They came from worlds scattered across the spiral arms of the galaxy. Some had smooth silver skin, others were covered in fur, scales, or feathers. Their shapes were as varied as their home planets, tall insect-like creatures with thin legs, reptilian beings with strong tails, and glowing jelly-like forms that floated without touching the ground. Every single one of them was here for the same reason: humans. For months, messages had spread across the galaxy warning of a new species from a small world called Earth. Reports said these humans were quick learners, stubborn in battle, and dangerously curious. They had begun building colonies and systems far from their home, and some worlds felt they were moving too fast. At the center of the Great Hall stood a circular platform where speakers could address the whole assembly. Round the platform, security drones floated silently, their red lights scanning for hidden weapons. The air was tense. Conversations between alien leaders were short, sharp, and filled with suspicion. Mira sat near the far end of the hall, among the lower-ranked aides. She wore a long hooded cloak that hid most of her face. Her seat was in the shadows. Away from the brighter central lights, she kept her head lowered, pretending to study the data tablet in her hands. No one here knew who she truly was. To the others, she was simply an assistant from a distant neutral world, someone whose job was to carry notes and quietly record the discussions. But Mira was not from that world. She was human. She had been sent on a secret mission by her people. Her task was simple to describe but dangerous to perform: listen, learn, and return home with the truth about what the Assembly planned for Earth. Today's gathering was important. The Assembly had called this meeting to decide what to do about humanity's expansion. Mira already knew the mood in the room would be hostile. She could feel it in the low growls, the flick of alien tails, and the way many delegates kept their eyes narrowed whenever humans were mentioned. The meeting began when a tall being named Vorach stepped onto the central platform. His skin was dark green and covered in thick scales. A long scar ran down the left side of his face, and his yellow eyes gleamed with cold focus. Honored members of the Assembly, Vorach's deep voice echoed through the hall. We are gathered here to face a growing danger, a danger called humanity. The words sent a ripple of agreement through the rows. Some delegates clicked their mandibles together. Others muttered in low tones. Vorach raised a clawed hand. We have all seen the reports. In less than 2 decades, humans have spread from their home system to 3 others. They build colonies, mine resources, and develop weapons faster than most of our civilizations have done in centuries. If they continue unchecked, they will soon challenge our place in the galaxy. Mira's hands tightened around her tablet. She knew her people were growing fast, but hearing the fear in Vorach's voice made her realize just how much attention they had drawn. Another delegate, a tall bird-like creature with a silver crest, stood up. Humans are unpredictable. They have no respect for borders. If they are allowed to grow stronger, they will cause chaos among our worlds. A deep voice from the back added. I say we deal with them before it is too late. Voices began to overlap, each one louder than the last. Some called for strict restrictions on human travel. Others spoke openly about military action. Through it all, Mira kept her face calm. She had been trained for moments like this, to watch, to listen, to remember. Her mission depended on understanding not just the words spoken, but the feelings. Behind them, a small insectoid being named Terran scuttled past her row, carrying a stack of data files. Mira had seen him before in earlier sessions. His movements were quick, his large eyes always scanning the room. Unlike most others here, Terran never joined the angry discussions. As Vorach continued to speak, showing holographic images of human ships and colonies, Mira's mind worked quickly. She needed to find out if the Assembly would vote for war or choose another path. Every word spoken today could decide the fate of her people. A sudden change in the room caught her attention. A soft hum came from the walls as security drones moved closer to the central platform. The hologram shifted, now showing a map of human settlements. Red markers glowed at each location. These, Vorach said, pointing to the glowing dots, are where the humans have planted their roots. If we are wise, we will strike now, before they spread any further. The hall filled with murmurs of agreement. A few delegates even pounded their tables in support. Mira felt her pulse quicken. This was worse than she feared. If the assembly chose to attack, human colonies would have little warning. They could be destroyed before any defense was prepared. Her mind flashed with images of her homeworld, the blue oceans, green forests, and bustling cities. She thought of her family, of the people who had no idea that in a hall far away, leaders from other worlds were deciding their fate. The speeches continued for hours. One by one, delegates rose to share their thoughts. Some wanted negotiations, but they were a small minority. The louder voices were those calling for force. By the end of the session, Mira understood one thing clearly: time was running out. When the meeting finally paused for a recess, delegates left their seats in clusters, speaking quickly to allies. Security drones drifted toward the exits, watching everyone. Mira stayed seated, pretending to check her tablet. She didn't move until most of the crowd had left the hall. Her plan was to slip away quietly, find a private corner, and send a coded message to her handlers back on Earth. But as she rose, she realized she was no longer alone in the row. Terran, the insectoid assistant, was standing beside her seat. His large black eyes studied her face for a long moment. "You listen very carefully," he said in a soft, clicking voice. Mira's hand froze on her tablet. "I take notes," she answered, keeping her tone neutral. Tar tilted his head. "Notes for who?" There was no anger in his voice, no threat, but Mira felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She could not tell if Terran was simply curious, or if he already suspected the truth. Before she could reply, a chime sounded through the hall, calling everyone back for the next session. Terran stepped away, vanishing into the moving crowd. Mira pulled her hood tighter and walked toward the shadows near the back. She had just learned how dangerous the situation was. Now, she would have to find a way to learn more and escape before it was too late. The second session of the Galactic Assembly began with sharper voices than before. The air felt heavy, as if the very walls had absorbed the tension from earlier speeches. Holographic lights danced above the central platform, displaying numbers, maps, and intercepted human transmissions. Mira returned to her seat near the shadows. Her hood was still drawn low, and her tablet rested in her lap. She knew she could not afford to miss a single word. The assembly was no longer simply discussing humans, it was now shaping a plan. Vorach, the reptilian leader, stood again at the center. His scarred face seemed even more severe under the shifting lights. "Honored delegates," he began. "The time for debate is over. We must act. The humans have already claimed 3 systems in the last decade. If we wait longer, they will have 10. A wave of murmurs swept the hall. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably, but many nodded in agreement. The bird-like delegate with the silver crest stepped forward. "I agree with Vorach. They spread too quickly. We cannot allow them to grow stronger. A coordinated strike would remove the threat before it becomes unmanageable." Mira kept her head down, but her ears caught every word. Her chest tightened. A coordinated strike meant a fleet, and a fleet meant war. Another delegate, a tall being with crystal-like skin, added, "It will not be enough to destroy a few colonies. We must send a message. Every human settlement must be removed, so they will understand they cannot challenge the Assembly's order." The hall filled with voices again, overlapping in a storm of agreement. The sound reminded Mira of crashing waves in a storm back on Earth. She forced herself to stay calm. Her mission was not to react, but to remember. Every plan, every name, every location mentioned would be valuable when she returned home. From her seat, she could see Terran, the insectoid aide, standing quietly near one of the side aisles. His antennae twitched slowly as he scanned the room, once or twice. Mira thought she saw him glance in her direction, but she could not be sure. Vorach raised his claw for silence. The noise faded. "I have prepared a plan," he said. "A combined fleet from volunteer worlds. Each fleet group will target one of the human colonies shown on this map. We will strike at the same time, leaving them no chance to warn one another." A hologram flickered above him, showing 3 red circles around the human settlements. One delegate asked, "What of Earth itself?" Vorach's yellow eyes narrowed. "For now, we leave their homeworld untouched. It will be a reminder of our mercy, but if they continue to expand, we will return for it." Mira's stomach turned at the word mercy. There was nothing merciful in destroying innocent colonies. The rest of the session turned into a detailed discussion of fleets, supply lines, and attack schedules. Mira typed notes quietly, her hands moving without pause. She had to make sure every detail reached her people. During a short pause, the delegates near her row began speaking in low tones. Mira leaned slightly, catching fragments of their words. "Strike within 3 moon cycles. Disable their communication first, no survivors." She pressed her lips together and wrote faster. The more she heard, the more certain she became. The assembly had already decided. The rest of this meeting was only about final preparations. When the session ended, most delegates left in groups, eager to continue their talks in private chambers. Mira remained seated until the crowd thinned. She stood and began walking toward the exit, careful to keep her pace steady. But halfway down the corridor, she heard a quiet voice behind her. "You are listening too closely for an aide." She turned. Terran was standing there, his large black eyes reflecting the hallway lights. His small hands were folded in front of him. Mira hesitated. "I am here to serve my delegate," she replied. Evenly.ta or en single quotes s antennae twitched. "Perhaps, or perhaps you serve someone else." He took a small step closer, his voice still soft. "Do not fear. I have no wish to harm you." Mira studied him for a moment. She could not tell if he was being honest, but there was no threat in his posture. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. "To warn you," Terran said, "if the plan is approved tomorrow, the fleets will leave within 3 moon cycles. Your people will not have time to prepare." Her eyes narrowed under the shadow of her hood. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because not every world here agrees with Vorach," Terran said. "Some of us believe humans could be allies, not enemies. But the voices calling for war are the loudest. If you can bring proof of this plan to your leaders, perhaps they can change the outcome." Mira's heartbeat quickened. "Proof?" Terran glanced around the emptying corridor. "There are secure records in the Assembly's central archive, every fleet order, every attack route, all stored there. If you can take them, your leaders will know exactly what is coming." Mira's mind raced. The central archive would be heavily guarded. Entering it would be dangerous. But the risk might be worth it if it meant saving her people. "Why not take them yourself?" she asked. Terran's antennae lowered slightly. "My movements are watched. But no one here suspects you." "Not yet." She considered his words. This could be a trap. Terran could be leading her into an ambush. But if he was telling the truth, this was the best chance she would have. "Where's the archive?" she asked finally. "Below the main chamber," Terran replied. "Through the maintenance halls. I can guide you." Mira gave a slow nod. "Then we go tonight." Terran tilted his head, the alien equivalent of a smile. "Wise choice. But we must be careful. The archive is guarded at all hours. If they catch us, they will not ask questions before removing us from the station." They began walking down the side corridor, blending in with the last few aides leaving the hall. Mira kept her hood low, her mind already picturing the path ahead. This mission had just become far more dangerous. She was no longer only listening. She would have to act out. As they reached a lift at the far end of the corridor, Terran pressed a small control on the wall. The lift doors opened with a soft hiss. Inside, dim light flickered from the ceiling panels. Ta or En stepped in first, then gestured for Mira to follow. "If you wish to save your people, you must see what the Assembly is truly planning." The doors closed, and the lift began to descend. Mira took a slow breath. She had entered this hall as a hidden observer, But now she was about to become a thief. If they succeeded, she could give Earth the warning it needed. If they failed, she doubted anyone would ever hear from her again. Far above them, in the now empty meeting hall, the hologram of Earth still glowed faintly over the central platform. It was the image of a world the Assembly saw as a threat, and the world Mira called home. The lift moved slowly, humming as it descended deep below the main chamber of the Galactic Assembly. Mira stood still, her hood low over her face, while Taryn watched the glowing panel that marked each passing level. When the lift stopped, the doors opened to a dim hallway. The walls here were not polished like those above. They were lined with pipes, cables, and humming power conduits. The air felt cooler and carried the faint scent of metal and oil. "This way," Taryn said softly, his thin legs moving quickly. Mira followed, keeping her steps light. She had learned during her training that places like this often had hidden cameras. If the assembly guards saw her in the maintenance level without clearance, it would raise questions she could not answer. The corridor curved and sloped downward. Twice, they passed narrow doors marked with alien symbols Mira didn't recognize. The hum of machinery grew louder the deeper they went. "How far is the archive?" she asked quietly. "Not far," Taryn replied, "but the closer we get, the more dangerous it becomes. There are security drones and a bioscanner at the entrance." Mira's brow furrowed. "Bioscanner?" Taryn nodded. "It reads body patterns and species markers. If it finds something unusual, it alerts the guards. That could be a problem. If the scanner detected she was human, everything would end here. Then how do we pass it?" she asked. "I know a way," Taryn said. "There's a service vent that leads into the archive from the ventilation system. The opening is small, but I can unlock it. We will avoid the scanner completely." They turned into a narrow side passage. The floor here was made of metal grating, and faint blue light glowed between the panels. Taryn stopped beside a large panel in the wall. It was bolted shut, but his thin hands moved quickly, pressing at hidden catches until the bolt slid free. With a soft click, he pulled the panel aside, revealing a dark, narrow tunnel. "This will be tight," Taryn said, looking at Mira. "Can you crawl?" "I can," Mira replied. She slipped into the vent, the metal cool against her hands and knees. Taryn followed behind, the faint sound of his many legs tapping against the floor of the tunnel. The air inside was still, carrying the distant hum of the station's systems. They crawled for several minutes, turning left, then right, until the tunnel began to slope upward. A faint white light appeared ahead. Taryn whispered, "That is the archive." They stopped just before the vent opened into a small maintenance corner inside the archive chamber. Through the vent's narrow slats, Mira could see rows of tall, glowing data towers, each one pulsed with faint light, carrying the stored plans and records of the assembly. 2 guards stood near the main entrance, tall figures with smooth armor and glowing visors. Their weapons rested against their sides, but their posture was alert. "We must be quiet," Taryn whispered. He slid the vent cover aside and stepped down into the corner. Mira followed, landing silently on the metal floor. The air here was cooler, filled with a faint hum from the towers. Taryn moved quickly to a terminal near the far wall. "I will access the storage core. Keep watch." Mira nodded and took a position where she could see both the guards and the narrow maintenance corner. Her heart was steady, but her senses were sharp. Every sound in the room felt louder than it was, the faint buzz of the lights, the soft whir of the cooling fans. Taryn's fingers moved across the controls. The terminal screen flickered, then streams of alien script appeared. "I have found the fleet plans," he whispered. "Attack schedules, routes, target coordinates, all here." He slid a small crystal device into the console, and the data began to transfer. Tiny lights danced across its surface. "How long?" Mira asked. "A few minutes," Taryn replied. "But once the transfer starts, there is a risk the system will notice." Mira's eyes flicked back to the guards. For now, they were still at their post. UNMOVING. The minutes dragged on. Mira's thoughts kept returning to the map she had seen earlier in the meeting hall. 3 human colonies marked in red. Now she knew the assembly truly meant to destroy them. She had to make sure this information reached Earth. A soft tone from the terminal made Terran's antennae twitch. "It is almost done," he said. But then, a sharp beeping sound filled the chamber. The guards turned instantly, their glowing visors locking onto the corner where Mira and Terran stood. "They have noticed." Terran hissed. Mira acted without hesitation. She stepped forward, her hood falling slightly to shadow her face. "Go," she told Terran. "I will hold them long enough for you to finish." The guards started toward them, weapons raising. Tarn single quotes S fingers moved quickly over the terminal. Just a few more seconds. Mira looked around and spotted a loose maintenance panel leaning against the wall. She grabbed it and swung it in front of her like a shield. The guards reached the corner just as Terran pulled the crystal device from the console. "Got it," Terran said. "Then move," Mira replied. They slipped back toward the vent. The first guard lunged, but Mira shoved the panel into his path, knocking him off balance. The second guard raised his weapon, but the shot struck the wall as Mira ducked into the vent opening. Terran was already inside, scuttling ahead with surprising speed. Mira crawled after him, the sound of metal boots pounding against the floor behind her. A blast of hot air filled the tunnel as a shot from the guards struck the vent wall. They crawled fast, turning sharply twice before the pounding footsteps faded. Finally, Terran stopped at another panel and pushed it open. They dropped into a dim corridor 2 levels above the archive. Mira stood, catching her breath. "Do they know who we are?" "Not yet," Terran said. "They will search, but the station is large. If we move quickly, we can get to the docking bay before they realize what we took." Mira nodded, adjusting her hood. "Then let's not waste time." As they moved down the corridor, Mira thought about the crystal in Terran's hand. Inside it was the proof she needed, proof that the assembly planned to destroy her people. Now came the hardest part, escaping the station alive. Far below them, in the archive chamber, the guards were already calling for a full security sweep. The hunt had begun. The corridor felt longer than it was. Each step Mira and Terran took echoed faintly against the smooth walls, and every distant sound made them tense. Somewhere behind them, security teams were already searching. Terran kept the small crystal device close to his chest. "We must avoid the main passages," he said. "If they block the docking bay, we will need another way out." Mira followed closely, scanning for cameras. A few security drones drifted near the ceiling, but they were heading the other way. For now, they were unseen. They turned down a side hall that sloped upward. The lighting here was dimmer, and the air smelled faintly of ozone. At the far end was a junction, with a wide main passage to the left and a narrow service route to the right. Tarn stop. Left is faster, but more dangerous. Right is safer, but longer. "Which do you think gives us a better chance?" Mira asked. Tarn single quotes S antennae twitched as he thought. "Safer. We cannot risk being stopped so soon." They went right. The narrow service route had low ceilings and exposed wiring. Once, they had to squeeze sideways between large pipes, their footsteps muffled by thick insulation on the floor. Halfway through, Terran slowed. "I must tell you something," he said quietly. Mira glanced at him. "Now, yes, so you understand why I help you." His voice was calm, but there was something heavier beneath it. "My world was once like yours, small, unimportant, until we began to grow. Some worlds welcomed us, others feared us. And then, a coalition of powerful species decided we were too much of a risk. They destroyed our colonies. We had no proof until it was too late." Mira understood. "You don't want to see that happen again." Terran nodded once. "I cannot undo what happened to my people, but I can stop it from happening to yours." They moved on in silence after that, each step taking them deeper into the service level. Finally, the passage opened into a large maintenance hub with glowing panels along one wall. A massive window showed part of the station's outer hull, the distant stars scattered across black space. Mira stepped closer to the window for a brief moment. Somewhere out there was Earth, far beyond reach for now. But if they made it to the docking bay, they could be on their way within hours. Taryn pointed to a vertical access shaft at the far side of the room. That leads up to the docking ring. From there, we find a ship. They climb the ladder inside the shaft, the faint hum of the station growing louder the higher they went. When they reached the top, Taryn pressed the control to open the hatch. A rush of warmer air met them as they stepped into a quieter corridor lined with doors. "This is close to the bay," Taryn whispered, "but there may be guards." They moved slowly, keeping near the wall. Mira kept her hood low and her pace steady, as if she belonged here. At the end of the corridor, the wide curve of the docking ring came into view. The bay was huge, with ships of different sizes docked in circular platforms. Cargo crews and technicians moved about, loading supplies and repairing hulls. Security drones hovered at intervals, scanning everyone who passed. Mira spotted two armed guards standing near the central walkway. Their armor was the same as the archive guards. They were watching each person entering the bay. "They're looking for us," Mira said under her breath. Taryn's antennae angled back. "We need a distraction." Before they could decide on one, a loud alarm echoed through the docking bay. Red lights flashed along the walls, and a mechanical voice announced, "Security alert, unauthorized access to restricted records. All bays on hold." The guards straightened, scanning the crowd. "They've locked the bay," Mira said. Taryn's eyes moved quickly. "There's another way, a supply shuttle leaving soon from the lower platform. It is not guarded as heavily." "Where is it?" "Through that door." Taryn pointed to a side entrance, half hidden behind a stack of cargo containers. They crossed the bay floor quickly, keeping the containers between them and the guards. The side door opened into a smaller loading area, where a single shuttle sat on a dimly lit platform. A few workers were preparing it for departure. Unaware of the alarm outside, Taryn approached the nearest worker, speaking in a language Mira didn't know. The worker looked uncertain at first, but then gave a slow nod and stepped aside. "He will let us board," Taryn said. "But once the shuttle leaves, there is no turning back. It will go to the outer transfer station. From there, you can reach your ship." Mira hesitated for only a second. "Let's go." They climbed into the shuttle's narrow cabin. The seats were built for smaller frames, but Mira managed to fit, pulling her hood lower. Taryn sat beside her, the crystal device secure in his hands. Through the small window, Mira saw the platform retract. The shuttle lifted smoothly, gliding out into the cold darkness of space. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to breathe more easily. They were leaving the assembly station behind. But Taryn's voice cut through her thoughts. "Do not relax yet. If they realize we are gone, they may send ships to intercept." The shuttle's pilot worked silently, guiding the craft toward the faint lights of the outer transfer station. Stars drifted slowly past the window. Mira glanced at Taryn. "Once I reach my ship, I can take this to my people. They'll be ready." Taryn's antennae lowered slightly. "I hope so. But remember, the assembly will not stop because we escaped. They will prepare another plan. Another vote. You will need allies." Mira knew he was right. This was not just about warning Earth. It was about finding worlds willing to stand with them. Without that, humans would be fighting the galaxy alone. The shuttle systems gave a soft chime as the transfer station grew larger in the window. Its silver rings rotated slowly, catching the light of a nearby star. Taryn looked out at it. "We are almost there. Once we dock, you must move quickly. Your enemies will not be far behind." Mira nodded, her focus sharpening again. This was only one step in a longer journey. She had the proof in her hands. Now she needed to get it home. The shuttle's approach to the outer transfer station was smooth, but Mira's thoughts were anything but calm. She kept glancing at the small crystal device in Taryn's hands, knowing it contained everything the assembly was trying to hide, the proof of their plans against her people. Through the small cabin window, the station grew larger. It was a wide, ring-shaped structure, its surface dotted with docking ports and blinking navigation lights. Cargo ships moved slowly around it, and smaller craft zipped in and out like insects around a hive. Taryn leaned toward her. "Once we dock, we split up. The assembly's guards will be watching the main routes. You must use a private channel to contact your ship. I will draw attention away from you. Mira frowned. If they catch you, they will not, Terrence said with quiet confidence. I have escaped worse. The shuttle slowed, aligning with one of the smaller docks. A soft vibration passed through the cabin as the magnetic clamp secured the craft to the station. The pilot spoke briefly to the dock control, then opened the side hatch. The air inside the station was warmer, carrying the faint scent of recycled oxygen and machine oil. Mira pulled her hood lower and stepped out, following the flow of passengers. Toward the station's interior, the main docking corridor was wide, lined with glowing panels and scrolling information displays. Above, security drones hovered in steady patterns, scanning faces and movement. Mira kept her pace steady, careful not to draw attention. Halfway down the corridor, Terrence slowed and whispered, "Go left at the next junction. It will take you to the service lifts. They are slower, but not watched as closely." Mira gave a small nod. Without another word, Terrence stepped away, heading in the opposite direction toward a busy cargo area. Within moments, he disappeared into the crowd. Mira turned left as instructed, moving quickly but without running. The service corridor was quieter, the lighting dimmer. Only a few workers passed by, carrying tools or small crates. She found the lift and stepped inside. The doors closed, sealing her in a narrow space lit by a single flickering panel. She pressed the control for the upper docking tier, where her ship, the small, fast courier vessel, was waiting. The lift hummed as it began to rise. Mira let out a slow breath. If she could reach her ship and launch before the assembly's alert spread here, she might get away without a chase. But halfway up, the lift stopped abruptly. The lights flickered, and a mechanical voice announced, "Security override, please. Remain in place." Mira's heart sank. The doors opened to reveal two guards in dark armor, their glowing visors fixed on her. "Step out." One ordered. Mira lowered her head, pretending to be just another aide. "Is there a problem?" The guard's voice was firm. "Identification." She held out the tablet she had been carrying since the assembly meeting. It displayed the false credentials she had been issued for this mission. The guard scanned it. With a handheld device, a pause. "Too long of a pause. Come with us," the guard said. Mira's mind raced. If she went with them, she would never reach her ship. She forced her expression to stay neutral, of course. She stepped forward, but as she passed between the two guards, she moved. Her training took over. A quick step to the side, a shove against the first guard's shoulder, and she slipped past them into the corridor. "Stop," one shouted. The other lunged, but she was already running. The corridor curved sharply, leading into a wider hall filled with dockworkers. Mira pushed through them, using the crowd as cover. Behind her, she heard the guards trying to follow, but their armor slowed them. She spotted an open maintenance hatch ahead. Without hesitation, she ducked inside. The narrow passage smelled faintly of coolant and machine grease. Pipes ran along both walls, and a faint rumble vibrated through the metal floor. She moved quickly, following the slope upward. The maintenance path ended at a graded platform overlooking the upper docking tier. Below, her ship was visible, a small, silver craft resting on its landing struts. Two more guards stood near it. Mira scanned the area. On the far side of the platform, a cargo lift was rising with a large container. The guards glanced toward it, distracted. That was her chance. She climbed down the nearest ladder, keeping low until she reached the dock floor. Then she moved quickly toward her ship, using the shadow of the cargo lift to cover her approach. One guard turned just as she reached the boarding ramp. His visor flickered in surprise, but Mira was already inside. She sealed the hatch and ran for the pilot's seat. The ship's systems came online with a deep hum. The control panels lit up, and the engines began to warm. Over the comm, a voice shouted, "Unregistered launch detected. Hold position." Mira ignored it. Her fingers moved across the controls, releasing the docking clamps. The ship lifted slightly, hovering above the platform. The guards outside raised their weapons. But before they could fire, Mira angled the ship toward the open launch bay and pushed the engines to full. The small craft shot forward, slipping past the outer gate and into open space. Stars filled the view ahead. For the first time since leaving the assembly hall, Mira felt the tightness in her chest ease, but only slightly. She still had to escape the station's patrol range. Her ship's sensors flashed an alert. Two pursuit signals appeared on the display, moving fast. Assembly interceptors. Mira tightened her grip on the controls. "You found me too quickly," she muttered under her breath. The interceptors closed in. Their ships were larger, but less agile. Mira angled her craft toward a dense asteroid field on the station's far side. The comm crackled with a firm voice. "A known vessel, power down and prepare to be boarded." She cut the channel without answering. The interceptors accelerated, their weapons charging. The asteroid field loomed ahead, jagged rocks turning slowly in the darkness. Mira guided her ship between two massive stones, the hull rattling as fragments scraped past. The interceptors followed, but their larger size made them slower to turn. Mira darted through narrow gaps, weaving between tumbling boulders. Each turn bought her a little more distance. Finally, the pursuit signals began to fade on her display. The interceptors had broken off. Mira let out a long breath, leaning back in the pilot's seat. The crystal device was safe, the assembly's plans recorded. Inside, now she only had to make the long journey home and decide who among the stars might be willing to stand with humanity. Mira's ship glided through the dark reaches of space, engines humming quietly as she checked the crystal device. The proof of the assembly's plan burned bright in her mind. Every fleet route, every attack schedule, every red-marked human colony, all of it was contained in the small crystal she held. Her people had to know. The stars stretched endlessly before her, but the path ahead was not just about distance. It was about warning Earth and the human colonies. Before the assembly could launch their coordinated strike, time was short. She activated the secure comm link to her homeworld. The signal bounced between relay satellites, passing through hidden channels until it reached the command center. Her hands trembled slightly as she transmitted the data. "Incoming transmission from Mira." The voice said at the command center. "Acknowledged. We are receiving it." Mira exhaled slowly. "They are planning an attack. The assembly intends to destroy all human colonies outside Earth in 3 moon cycles. I have the plans and coordinates. You must act immediately." There was a pause on the other end. Then the voice replied, "Understood. We will mobilize defense forces and prepare a response fleet." "Thank you, Mira. You have saved us." Relief filled her for a moment, but it was fleeting. She knew this was only the beginning. The assembly would not stop plotting just because their plans were exposed. She adjusted her course toward a nearby neutral system. The plan was to meet a small group of allied worlds willing to hear the truth about the assembly's intentions. If she could gain their support, humanity would have allies in the galaxy for the first time. Hours passed as the ship moved silently. Mira reviewed the data again, memorizing names of ships, timings, and locations. Every detail mattered. If the assembly discovered she had escaped, the galaxy would be on high alert. Finally, her ship reached the designated meeting point, a space station orbiting a calm gas giant. The station was neutral, a hub for trade and diplomacy. Mira docked quietly, the docking bay almost empty. Inside the station, she moved quickly through narrow corridors, heading for the council chamber where representatives of several worlds had agreed to meet her. She carried the crystal device like a precious gem, knowing that it could change the balance of power. The council chamber was circular, with a domed ceiling showing the swirling clouds of the gas giant below. Delegates from 4 worlds were already seated. Each was different: 1 insectoid, 1 avian, 1 amphibious, and 1 crystalline being whose body refracted the light like a prism. Mira stepped forward, hood low, revealing herself fully for the first time. She placed the crystal device on the central table. "I am Mira, a human," she said clearly. "I come with proof that the Galactic Assembly plans to destroy all human colonies outside Earth. They intend to strike in 3 moon cycles. I have the exact fleet routes and attack schedules." The delegates exchanged shocked glances. One of them, the bird-like representative, leaned forward. You say humans are marked for destruction. Yes. Mira replied, and if we do not act, countless lives will be lost. The crystalline delegate's body shimmered. We have heard warnings before. Why should we believe you? Mira opened the crystal device. Holographic lights rose from it, showing the assembly's fleet plans. Red lines connected the locations of human colonies, and symbols indicated attack orders and schedules. This is proof, Mira said firmly. You can see for yourselves. The assembly intends to destroy them all without warning. The insectoid delegate's mandibles clicked nervously. These plans are detailed. If true, the assembly is committing an act of war before we even vote. Why have they not acted openly? Mira shook her head. Because they believe humans are still unprepared. They underestimated us. I was sent to observe, but I discovered their plan and escape with the evidence. The avian delegate ruffled his feathers. And you escaped alone, against their security forces? Mira nodded, with the help of a friend. But the important thing is that the galaxy must know the truth now. There was silence as the delegate studied the holographic projection. Finally, the crystalline being spoke. If this is real, we cannot ignore it. The assembly is not just planning to eliminate humans. They are bypassing standard diplomatic procedures. This is unprecedented. Then what should we do? The insectoid asked. Mira looked around the table. We must warn the human colonies and prepare defenses. We also need allies willing to challenge the assembly if they attack. This is the only way humans can survive. The avian delegate nodded slowly. I will bring this to my world's council. They will support you if the evidence is true. The insectoid tapped a clawed finger against the table. I will do the same. We must form a coalition. Even the assembly cannot stop coordinated opposition from multiple worlds. Mira's eyes brightened slightly. Thank you. Every ally counts. If we act quickly, we can save lives and prevent the assembly from achieving their plan. The crystalline delegate leaned closer. You risked your life to bring this here. It is clear that humans are capable of courage and determination. Perhaps the galaxy has underestimated your species. Mira felt a warmth she had not expected. The words reminded her that humanity's strength was not just in technology or numbers. It was in courage, resilience, and the will to survive. The discussion continued for hours. The delegates analyzed the fleet plans, comparing their forces and potential responses. They discussed warning messages, defensive measures, and the possibility of preemptive actions against assembly ships approaching human colonies. Mira stayed calm, but her mind was racing. Every second counted. She needed these worlds to act, and she needed her people to be ready. At the end of the council meeting, a plan was agreed upon. Representatives would send messages to their homeworlds to support humanity. They would also transmit warnings to the human colonies using hidden relay networks that Mira had helped establish in earlier missions. Mira held the crystal device tightly. For the first time in days, she allowed herself a small smile. The truth was out, and the galaxy had seen it. As she left the council chamber, Terran appeared beside her. You did well, he said softly. This is only the beginning, but you have changed the course of events. Mira nodded. I hope so. The assembly will not give up easily. But now, humans have a chance, and allies. Terran's antennae twitched once. Your people are stronger than they realize. They just need to know that, and others need to see it too. Mira looked out through the station's observation window. Stars stretched endlessly. But now they seemed full of possibility rather than danger. The galaxy was large, filled with worlds that had once feared humans, and some that now had reason to trust them. This is just the start, she said quietly. But for the first time, I feel like we can fight back. Terran's voice was calm, but firm. Then let us prepare. The assembly may still come. But now, humans are no longer alone. Mira nodded, feeling a sense of resolve she had never felt before. For the first time, she realized that humanity's survival did not depend on hiding or avoiding danger. It depended on courage, honesty, and the willingness to stand against forces that underestimated them. The council chamber faded behind her as she prepared to continue the journey. The crystal device still held the evidence, the proof that the assembly's plan could no longer be kept secret. Humanity had a chance, and the galaxy was beginning to see their strength. Mira took a deep breath. Ahead was a future uncertain and dangerous, but for the first time, she felt ready to meet it. The galaxy had been warned, and humans were no longer hiding. The galaxy was in motion. News of the assembly's plans had spread faster than anyone had expected. Human colonies had begun to prepare defenses, and several allied worlds had mobilized fleets to support them. Mira's actions had sparked hope, but also fear. The assembly would not remain idle, and their power was vast. Mira stood on the bridge of her small courier vessel, watching the stars drift past. The crystal device rested safely in a secure compartment. Its information had been copied and shared with Earth's command centers and allied councils. The proof of the assembly's plans was now public across multiple systems. Beside her, Terran monitored communications. Reports indicate the assembly is aware of our movement. They are sending interceptors to several sectors. They will not strike randomly. They will try to suppress resistance where it is weakest. Mira nodded. Then we must act where they least expect us. We cannot wait for them to choose the battleground. Humanity and our allies will show that. Underestimating us is a mistake. Through the bridge's viewport, she could see the first sign of assembly ships approaching. Large cruisers moved in formation, their metallic hulls gleaming faintly against the backdrop of stars. Smaller attack vessels accompanied them, fast and deadly. TAREN activated the comms system, sending encrypted messages to all allied fleets. Prepare for coordinated defense, hold positions, but be ready to counterattack. Do not engage unless ordered. Humanity is not alone. Mira adjusted the ship's trajectory toward the nearest human colony. It was small, one of the outer settlements, but it had strategic importance. The assembly intended to destroy it first, as indicated in the crystal device's plans. When she arrived, the colony's planetary defenses were already partially active. Shields glowed faintly against the void, and several orbital platforms had been armed with weaponry. Citizens moved with purposeful urgency, preparing for an attack. Mira landed in the central docking bay. Command personnel greeted her, reviewing the data she brought. For the first time, she could see the impact of her journey. Humans were no longer passive. They were ready to fight back. "Commander Mira," said a human officer, "we have confirmation from allied fleets. They will move to engage the assembly's forces on our behalf. We also have automated defenses ready for deployment." Mira nodded. "Then we fight smart. We cannot rely on numbers alone. We must use the galaxy's understanding that humans are resourceful, brave, and willing to stand together." The first attack came at dawn. The assembly's fleet approached from multiple directions, expecting weak resistance. Instead, they met prepared humans and their allies. Orbital guns fired, sending streaks of energy toward approaching cruisers. Smaller human ships darted between massive enemy vessels, evading fire while striking with precision. Mira stayed on the bridge, directing movements and relaying communications. Terran assisted with navigation and targeting suggestions. His knowledge of assembly strategies invaluable. The battle raged across space. Explosions lit the darkness as fleets collided. The assembly underestimated humans' coordination and courage. For every cruiser they destroyed, human forces found ways to outmaneuver and retaliate. In the midst of the chaos, Mira received a signal from Earth's command. "Mira, the assembly is deploying its elite strike force toward multiple colonies. They hope to overwhelm our defenses." She tightened her grip on the console. "We will meet them with every resource we have. Humanity will not be destroyed. We have allies, strategy, and courage." The elite strike force approached. Ships larger than anything the humans had faced moved with precision. Mira studied their formations carefully. "They rely on predictability," she said. "We will break it, divide and confuse them." Terrans. Antennae twitched. "They underestimate how humans can adapt. We can exploit that." Following their plan, Mira coordinated attacks that forced the assembly's elite units into traps. Ambushes from hidden asteroid fields, surprise attacks from allied ships, and precise orbital strikes disrupted the enemy's formations. One by one, the strike vessels were damaged or destroyed. The assembly commanders grew frustrated. Their confidence had been based on speed and superiority. They had not anticipated humans working with allies across multiple systems, using intelligence, courage, and unconventional strategies on one of the destroyed ship's communication channels. Mira heard a message crackle. "This is impossible. Humans should be weak. How did they anticipate every move?" Mira allowed herself a small smile. The galaxy had underestimated her species, and that underestimation was now their greatest weakness. The battle continued for hours. Human fleets and allies pushed back the assembly forces, protecting colonies and keeping civilians safe. The outer colonies had time to evacuate, reinforced by transport ships moving at full capacity. Every decision Mira had made, every piece of information from the crystal device, contributed to their survival. Finally, the assembly's remaining ships began to retreat. Their fleet had suffered significant losses. Mira watched them disappear into the darkness of space. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's courage firsthand. In the aftermath, colonies celebrated, not only for survival, but for recognition. Humans had faced a superior force and had not only survived, but proven themselves capable of standing against the Assembly's authority. Allies praised their coordination, bravery, and leadership. Mira stood on the bridge of her ship, looking at the stars. She felt exhaustion, but also pride. Every decision, every risk had led to this moment. Humanity had stood, and the galaxy had seen their strength. Terran came beside her. "You have done well. Humans have earned respect today." Mira nodded. "It was not just me. Every human, every ally, every fleet that joined, they all stood together. That is what makes us strong." The crystal device, now safely stored, was a reminder of the power of truth and courage. It had exposed the Assembly's plan, prevented the destruction of countless lives, and changed the perception of humanity across the stars. As fleets returned to their home systems, news spread. Humans were no longer considered weak, naive, or unprepared. They were recognized as a species capable of bravery, strategy, and resilience. Mira knew this was only the beginning. The Assembly would recover, but the galaxy now knew that humans were not a species to be underestimated. Their courage and determination would shape the future of interstellar politics and alliances. For the first time, Mira allowed herself a full smile. Humanity had survived. Humanity had proven its worth. And humanity had allies who would stand beside them if ever the galaxy tried to challenge their place again. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, full of possibility. Mira looked at them and knew that humanity's story had only just begun. They would continue to explore, grow, and defend themselves, and the galaxy would remember this day, the day humans stood, and the day no one underestimated them again.